In those days the multitude being very great, and having nothing to eat, Jesus called his disciples to him, and said to them, I have compassion on the multitude, because they now have been with me 3 days, and have nothing to eat. And if I send them away fasting to their own houses, they will faint by the way, for divers of them came from afar. And his disciples answered him, From where can a man satisfy these men with bread here in the wilderness? And he asked them, How many loaves do you have? And they said, 7. And he commanded the people to sit down on the ground. And he took the 7 loaves, and gave thanks, and broke them, and gave his disciples to set before them. And they did set them before the people. And they had a few small fishes, and he blessed them, and commanded to set them also before them. So they did eat, and were filled. And they took of the broken meat that was left 7 baskets. And they that had eaten were about 4,000, and he sent them away. And straightway he entered into a ship with his disciples, and came to the parts of Dalmanutha. And the Pharisees came forth, and began to question him, seeking of him a sign from heaven, tempting him. And he sighed deeply in his spirit, and he said, Why does this generation seek after a sign? Truly I say to you, there will no sign be given to this generation. And he left them, and entering into the ship again, he departed to the other side. Now the disciples had forgotten to take bread, neither did they have in the ship with them more than 1 loaf. And he charged them, saying, Take heed, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, and of the leaven of Herod. And they reasoned among themselves, saying, It is because we have no bread. And when Jesus knew it, he said to them, Why do you reason, because you have no bread? Do you not yet perceive, neither understand? Has your heart been hardened? Having eyes do you see not? And having ears do you hear not? And do you not remember? When I broke the 5 loaves among 5,000, how many baskets full of fragments did you take up? They said to him, 12. And when the 7 among 4,000, how many baskets full of fragments did you take up? And they said, 7. And he said to them, How is it that you do not understand? And he came to Bethsaida, and they brought a blind man to him, and besought him to touch him. And he took the blind man by the hand, and led him out of the town. And when he had spit on his eyes, and put his hands upon him, he asked him if he saw aught. And he looked up, and said, I see men as trees walking. After that he put his hands again upon his eyes, and made him look up. And he was restored, and saw every man clearly. And he sent him away to his house, saying, Neither go into the town, nor tell it to any in the town. And Jesus went out, and his disciples into the towns of Caesarea Philippi. And by the way he asked his disciples, saying to them, Whom do men say I am? And they answered, John the Baptist, but some say Elijah, and others one of the prophets. And he said to them, But whom do you say I am? And Peter answered and said, You are the Christ. And he charged them that they should tell no man of him. And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things, and be rejected of the elders, and of the chief priests, and scribes, and to be killed, and after 3 days rise again. And he spoke that saying openly. And Peter took him and began to rebuke him. But when he had turned about and looked on his disciples, he rebuked Peter, saying, Get behind me, Satan, for you savor not the things that be of God, but the things that be of men. And when he had called the people to him with his disciples also, he said to them, Whosoever will come after me, let him deny himself, and take up his cross, and follow me. For whosoever will save his life will lose it, but whosoever will lose his life for my sake and the gospel's, the same will save it. For what will it profit a man if he will gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his own soul? Whosoever therefore will be ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him also will the Son of Man be ashamed, when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. And he said to them, Truly I say to you, that there be some of them that stand here that will not taste of death till they have seen the kingdom of God come with power. And after 6 days Jesus took with him Peter and James and John, and led them up into a high mountain apart by themselves, and he was transfigured before them. And his raiment became shining, exceeding white as snow, so as no fuller on earth can white them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, and they were talking with Jesus. And Peter answered and said to Jesus, Master, it is good for us to be here, and let us make 3 tabernacles, one for you, and one for Moses, and one for Elijah. And he was not to say, for they were sore afraid. And there was a cloud that overshadowed them, and a voice came out of the cloud, saying, This is my beloved Son, hear him. And suddenly, when they looked round about, they saw no man any more, save Jesus only with themselves. And as they came down from the mountain, he charged them that they should tell no man what things they had seen, till the Son of Man were risen from the dead. And they kept that saying with themselves, questioning one with another, what the rising from the dead should mean. And they asked him, saying, Why did the scribes say that Elijah must first come? And he answered and told them, Elijah truly comes first, and restores all things, and how it is written of the Son of Man, that he must suffer many things, and be set at naught. But I say to you, that Elijah is indeed come, and they have done to him whatsoever they listed, as it is written of him. And when he came to his disciples, he saw a great multitude about them, and the scribes questioning with them. And straightway all the people, when they beheld him, were greatly amazed, and running to him saluted him. And he asked the scribes, What do you question with them? And one of the multitude answered and said, Master, I have brought to you my son, that has a dumb spirit. And wherever he takes him, he tears him, and he foams, and gnashes with his teeth, and pines away. And I spoke to your disciples that they should cast him out, and they could not. And he answered him and said, O faithless generation, how long will I be with you? How long will I suffer you? Bring him to me. And they brought him to him. And when he saw him, straightway the spirit tare from him, and he fell on the ground, and wallowed foaming. And he asked his father, How long is it ago since this came to him? And he said, Of a child. And oftentimes it has cast him into the fire, and into the waters, to destroy him. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us. And Jesus said to him, If you can believe, all things are possible to him that believes. And straightway the father of the child cried out, and said with tears, Lord, I believe. Help my unbelief. When Jesus saw that the people came running together, he rebuked the foul spirit, saying to him, You dumb and deaf spirit, I charge you, come out of him, and enter no more into him. And the spirit cried, and rent him sore, and came out of him, and he was as one dead, insomuch that many said, He is dead. But Jesus took him by the hand, and lifted him up, and he arose. And when he was come into the house, his disciples asked him privately, Why could we not cast him out? And he said to them, This kind can come forth by nothing, but by prayer and fasting. And they departed, and passed through Galilee, and he would not that any man should know it. For he taught his disciples, and said to them, The Son of Man is delivered into the hands of men, and they will kill him, and after that he is killed, he will rise the 3rd day. And they understood not that saying, and were afraid to ask him. And he came to Capernaum, and being in the house he asked them, What was it that you disputed among yourselves by the way? But they held their peace, for by the way they had disputed among themselves, who should be the greatest. And he sat down and called the 12, and said to them, If any man desire to be first, the same will be last of all, and servant of all. And he took a child, and set him in the midst of them. And when he had taken him in his arms, he said to them, Whosoever will receive one such children in my name, receives me. And whosoever will receive me, receives not me, but him that sent me. And John answered him, saying, Master, we saw one casting out devils in your name, and he followed us not, and we forbade him, because he followed us not. And Jesus said, Forbid him not, for there is no man that will do a miracle in my name, that can lightly speak evil of me. For he that is not against us is on our part. For whosoever will give you a cup of water to drink in my name, because you belong to Christ, truly I say to you, he will not lose his reward. And whosoever will offend one of these little ones that believe in me, it is better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and he were cast into the sea. And if your hand offend you, cut it off. It is better to enter into life maimed, than having 2 hands to go into hell, into the fire that will never be quenched, where their worm dies not, and the fire is not quenched. And if your foot offend you, cut it off. It is better for you to enter halt into life, than having 2 feet to be cast into hell, into the fire that will never be quenched, where their worm dies not, and the fire is not quenched. And if your eye offend you, pluck it out. It is better for you to enter into the kingdom of God with 1 eye, than having 2 eyes to be cast into hellfire, where their worm dies not, and the fire is not quenched. For every one will be salted with fire, and every sacrifice will be salted with salt. Salt is good, but if the salt have lost his saltiness, where will you season it? Have salt in yourselves, and have peace with one another.